You unearthed the very essence you instinctively knew had to be concealed for your survival. There was an unspoken rule that you weren't meant to possess this level of awareness, this potent intuition, this profound difference. Consequently, you swiftly grasped the perilous nature of your authentic self. You receded, becoming quieter, your inner light dimmed, your presence shrinking. You developed a habit of apologizing for simply existing, for occupying space, and deep within your being, a crucial part of you retreated into concealment, a phenomenon Jung meticulously documented. This wasn't merely a matter of unfulfilled potential, it was an ingenious strategy for self-preservation. You didn't consciously elect to suppress your unique abilities, your psyche made that executive decision for you. It intuitively understood the world's harsh response to those who radiate too brightly, perceive too much, or feel with excessive depth. Yet, Jung's profound discovery offered a paradigm shift. This concealment was never meant to be a permanent state. Instead, it was an intricate period of preparation. And if these words resonate with you now, it signals that the era of hiding has concluded. Remember the child who could instinctively gauge the emotional temperature of any room long before mastering arithmetic. The one who sensed when adults were dissembling, even before comprehending the concept of a lie. The one who absorbed every emotion of those nearby, believing it to be a universal experience, until the unsettling realization that others didn't share this capacity. That child was you. And the prevailing world, quite frankly, found itself utterly bewildered by your existence. Across decades of his extensive clinical work, Jung meticulously documented this recurring pattern, children born with what he termed differentiated perception. These individuals weren't inherently superior, simply profoundly distinct. They processed reality via additional, often unacknowledged sensory and intuitive channels that most people never cultivate. They intuitively discerned patterns in human behavior, perceived subtle shifts in energetic fields, and possessed knowledge without any conscious understanding of its origin. Invariably, each one internalized the same stark lesson for survival. Either conceal this ability or risk profound harm from it. Your family, lacking the vocabulary to articulate your unique nature, labeled you sensitive, dramatic, or too much. Your educators frequently misinterpreted your acute insight as a form of disruption. Your peers, feeling inadvertently exposed by your perceptive presence, instinctively distanced themselves. It wasn't that anyone intentionally sought to harm you, they simply lacked the requisite consciousness to fully comprehend or safely accommodate your authentic being. Consequently, your psyche made a definitive declaration. If safe visibility was unattainable, then complete invisibility would be its chosen path. Jung famously termed this phenomenon the concealment of the golden shadow. While the common understanding of the shadow typically encompasses the darker aspects we suppress, our anger, our selfishness, our cruelty, Jung recognized that we equally conceal our brilliance, our intelligence, our inherent power, and our genuine gifts. We relegate these luminous qualities to the unconscious when we perceive them as threatening to others. And in your case, this suppression ran exceptionally deep. You meticulously trained yourself to downplay your observations, to feign ignorance of what you so clearly perceived. Witnessing someone's struggle, you would remain silent rather than articulating the unspoken truth. Sensing palpable tension in a relationship, you consciously learned to override your internal knowing. This led to the development of what Jung termed protective blindness, the astonishing capacity to unsee what you had seen, to unknow what you intrinsically knew, and to unfeel what you viscerally felt. The immediate repercussions were severe. Chronic fatigue stemming from the immense energy required to suppress your natural abilities, pervasive depression born from a life lived disconnected from your authentic truth, persistent anxiety originating from the constant internal vigilance, assessing how much of your true self was safe to reveal. Physical ailments manifested as your body somatically absorbed the stress of incessant self-betrayal. You were led to believe that something was inherently flawed within you, while Jung understood that the dysfunction resided unequivocally in your environment. Yet the psyche operates with an intelligence far surpassing our conscious comprehension. While you were diligently mastering the art of concealment, it was simultaneously engaged in its own profound process of learning, cataloging, and meticulous preparation. Each individual who dismissed your insights inadvertently educated you about the dynamics of psychological projection. Every family member who insisted you diminish yourself illuminated the fragility of the ego. Each friend incapable of tolerating your depth provided lessons in varying levels of consciousness. You weren't merely hiding, you were, in essence, undergoing an intensive covert study. Let's examine a compelling case profile that perfectly illustrates this pattern. This dynamic becomes vividly clear in the narrative of an individual possessing highly differentiated intuitive perception, someone who only began to grasp the true nature of their gift after years of profound suppression. This person could enter any space and instantly apprehend its underlying psychological atmosphere, discerning who was disingenuous, who was silently enduring emotional pain, or who harbored deep-seated secret resentments. This wasn't a chosen ability, it was simply the inherent wiring through which their nervous system processed information. However, this extraordinary gift presented immediate and significant challenges. They found it impossible to engage in superficial small talk, as their perception effortlessly penetrated every social facade. Maintaining friendships proved arduous, as individuals often felt profoundly exposed and uncomfortable in their presence. Sustaining employment became difficult because their very being inadvertently disrupted the unspoken, unconscious agreements that typically ensure smooth group functioning. What outwardly appeared to be social failure was, in truth, an overwhelming saturation of perception. Jung observed this precise pattern repeatedly throughout his clinical practice. These individuals were not, in essence, failing at relationships. Rather, they were profoundly succeeding at a level of perception within a world that paradoxically penalized such accuracy. Their finely tuned nervous systems effortlessly detected subtle micro-expressions that betrayed true emotional states. They intuitively felt the energetic shifts signaling deception. They sensed the pervasive collective tension that groups unconsciously conspired to overlook. And for this heightened awareness, they invariably paid a steep price. The most agonizing aspect wasn't merely the pervasive isolation, it was the insidious erosion of self-doubt. When confronted with universal insistence that your perceptions are erroneous, one inevitably begins to internalize that belief. When your family persistently asserts you're fabricating realities, you start to question your own sanity. When friends accuse you of negativity for merely identifying glaring issues, you begin to wonder if you are, in fact, the fundamental problem. This is precisely how differentiated perception becomes pathologized, not due to its inaccuracy, but because of its profound inconvenience to others. Jung witnessed this dynamic unfold time and again in his practice. His most perceptive patients weren't ultimately destroyed by the suppression of their gifts. On the contrary, they had been undergoing an unwitting period of intensive training, learning to decipher human nature at depths most individuals never approach. They were developing strategic awareness while projecting an aura of harmlessness, quietly cultivating immense internal strength, even as everyone presumed their weakness. This period of concealment was never a failure. It was an essential phase of profound becoming. Modern psychological research has since validated much of what Jung observed in his clinical practice. Dr. Elaine Aron's groundbreaking work on highly sensitive persons, HSPs, reveals that approximately 20% of the population possesses heightened sensory and emotional sensitivity. However, Jung identified an even more specific category within his extensive psychological typology, the introverted intuitive type, comprising roughly 1% of humanity. These individuals don't merely feel deeply,
They perceive unconscious patterns with startling clarity. Empaths, in essence, are not broken. They are alchemists in progress.
These introverted, intuitive types perceive unconscious patterns with startling clarity. They process not only overt social cues, but also deeply embedded unconscious emotional states, repressed psychological content, and intricate behavioral patterns that remain invisible to others. They discern the underlying depression masked by forced smiles. They sense the quiet desperation concealed beneath confident presentations. They viscerally feel the collective shadow that groups unconsciously conspire to disregard. And this profound ability invariably transforms into a formidable burden when no conceptual framework exists to comprehend it as a genuine gift. Jung wrote extensively on what he termed the problem of the superior function, the paradox where one's greatest psychological strength paradoxically transforms into their heaviest burden, precisely because it isolates them from the collective unconscious participation. You cannot unknow what you fundamentally know. You cannot unfeel what you intrinsically feel. You cannot unsee what you clearly perceive. Therefore, the imperative becomes either to consciously integrate this function or to suffer its ramifications unconsciously. A third alternative simply does not exist. This suffering manifests in highly predictable ways. You frequently find yourself becoming the designated problem within every group you join. Not because you actively create issues, but because your presence illuminates underlying problems already simmering within the collective unconscious. Jung labeled this the scapegoat phenomenon, where the individual bearing superior perception inadvertently becomes the unwilling repository for everything the group is incapable of consciously acknowledging about itself. This pattern elucidates why these individuals don't merely experience a sense of misunderstanding. They often feel systematically targeted by an inexplicable, irrational force, and their feeling is not unfounded. When you possess the clarity to perceive what others desperately need to deny, you inherently become a threat to their established psychological defense systems. This is not intentional, it is simply a consequence of your authentic existence. Your very presence compels people to confront truths they have diligently avoided for years. In such instances, most individuals will inevitably attack the mirror rather than diligently examining their own reflection. Jung observed that individuals with highly differentiated perception often discern the unconscious contents of others with remarkable clarity, largely because they process information at a distinct and greater level of complexity. They are not striving to be judgmental or to assert superiority. Their nervous systems are simply uniquely calibrated to detect intricate patterns that remain entirely invisible to the majority. It's akin to possessing night vision in a world where everyone else can only perceive by daylight. You are not inherently superior, you are simply perceiving different wavelengths of reality. However, here lies the profound source of this ability's isolating nature. You cannot truly share what you perceive because others are literally incapable of detecting it. You might attempt to describe the subtle emotional undercurrents in a room, only to be met with blank stares, as if you're speaking an utterly foreign language. You articulate evident behavioral patterns and are dismissed as over-analyzing. You voice genuine concern about emergent dynamics and are quickly labeled paranoid. The inherent curse of heightened consciousness is its inability to be seamlessly shared with those who do not yet possess it. This unique predicament gives rise to what Jung termed participation mystique in reverse. While most individuals inhabit a state of merged consciousness with their immediate environment, unconsciously absorbing and reflecting collective psychological contents, those with differentiated perception experience the precise opposite. They remain psychologically distinct and separate, even when physically present within a group. They observe the intricate collective dance without being emotionally swept up in its currents. This generates a profound existential loneliness that the majority of people simply cannot fathom. Jung grasped this deeply on a personal level during what he famously called his
confrontation with the unconscious, an intense period from 1913 to 1919, meticulously documented in The Red Book. He endured an overwhelming influx of unconscious contents, both personal and collective, that brought him to the precipice of destruction. He later wrote that he felt menaced by a looming psychosis, saved only by his profound capacity to understand and contextualize these experiences through his dedicated work with patients. His superior perception, in essence, nearly annihilated him until he painstakingly learned to consciously integrate it.
This profound personal struggle is precisely why Jung considered the integration of superior perception not merely therapeutically significant, but psychologically urgent. Without its proper assimilation, individuals possessing such perception confront three distinct and serious dangers. Firstly, there's the risk of collective unconscious disruption. When someone sees beyond the shared illusions that bind groups together, they inevitably become a destabilizing force. Organizations, families, and indeed entire societies often operate through unspoken collective unconscious agreements regarding what will and will not be acknowledged. The highly perceptive individual inadvertently breaches these fundamental agreements simply by existing authentically. Secondly, there's profound psychological isolation. When your preeminent psychological strength paradoxically transforms into the source of your most acute suffering, you encounter what Jung famously termed the problem of the island. You become an island of solitary awareness, adrift in a vast ocean of collective unconsciousness. This isolation extends far beyond mere social estrangement. It is inherently existential. You inhabit a fundamentally different reality from everyone surrounding you, and there exists no authentic bridge back to collective participation that doesn't demand a painful act of self-betrayal. Thirdly, and most perilous, is the danger of identity dissolution. Individuals who continually absorb the unconscious contents of others frequently lose vital contact with their own authentic personality. They become so utterly flooded with external psychological material that they can no longer differentiate between their intrinsic inner world and what they are merely absorbing from their environment. Jung referred to this as participation mystique in its negative form, a debilitating state where psychological boundaries utterly dissolve and the individual becomes so merged with collective unconscious contents that their personal identity is effectively annihilated. This, Jung contended, was the true peril. Not that gifted individuals would simply face societal rejection, but rather that they would completely lose themselves in the arduous process of attempting to adapt to a collective consciousness utterly incapable of accommodating their unique level of perception. They risked becoming psychological chameleons, perpetually shape-shifting to ensure survival until they utterly forgot their original, authentic form. And then, invariably, something shifted. Perhaps a profound betrayal made pretense utterly unsustainable. Perhaps the agony of remaining hidden eventually surpassed the fear of revelation. Or perhaps you simply grew weary of perpetually diminishing yourself for individuals who would never expand sufficiently to truly meet you. Whatever the specific catalyst, something deep within you didn't break, but rather snapped awake. Jung termed this pivotal moment the return of the repressed, the undeniable instant when the long-concealed gift emphatically demands to be seen. This transformation wasn't a gradual unfolding. You didn't slowly re-emerge as yourself. Rather, you awoke one day with a profound realization. You were simply done. Done painstakingly explaining yourself to those unwilling to comprehend. Done shrinking your essence to accommodate others' comfort. Done apologizing for clearly perceiving what they adamantly refused to acknowledge. The intrinsic pain of hiding had finally eclipsed the primal fear of visibility. And with that shift, everything irrevocably changed. People undeniably noticed. Those who had benefited from your previous diminishment grew distinctly uncomfortable.
Family members who relied on you to maintain a specific role reacted with anger. Friends who appreciated your smaller, less threatening version became distant. They would invariably remark that you had changed, that you were no longer yourself. Jung, however, would offer a profoundly different perspective. You weren't truly yourself before. Now, you are finally inhabiting your authentic self, and not everyone possesses the capacity to tolerate that truth. Jung identified this critical juncture as the individuation crisis, the precise moment when the psyche's innate demand for wholeness decisively overrides the ego's persistent need for social acceptance. This process is neither comfortable nor aesthetically pleasing, yet it is absolutely essential, for the only alternative is a form of psychological death. To spend your entire existence masquerading as someone you are not, and your psyche, in its profound wisdom, will not permit such self-betrayal indefinitely. Eventually, it compels an undeniable choice: embrace who you authentically are, or endure the severe consequences of perpetual self-denial.
The profound gift you once concealed is now reactivating, but it manifests not as the raw, unintegrated perception of your childhood. Instead, it is refined, consciously honed, and strategically applied. You no longer merely observe patterns, you deeply comprehend their underlying significance. You don't just sense energy, you possess the wisdom to effectively wield it. You don't simply experience intuition, you now trust it implicitly and completely. That period of hiding was anything but wasted time. It was, in fact, an intensive phase of integration training. Through decades of meticulous clinical work, Jung devised and refined a comprehensive three-phase process for integrating superior perception. Phase 1 involves recognition and differentiation, the crucial skill of learning to distinguish between your authentic inner experiences and the external content you unconsciously absorb. He termed this conscious discrimination, the vital ability to delineate what truly belongs to you versus what originates from others. Without this precise discrimination, genuine individual development remains impossible. The technique, while conceptually simple, is far from easy. Commit to daily periods of complete solitude. Allow any absorbed material to settle, enabling you to recognize your own authentic psychological voice beneath the clamor of others' projected contents. This isn't strictly meditation or a spiritual practice, it is more accurately psychological hygiene, a deliberate act of creating internal space to carefully sort your own feelings from everyone else's emotional debris. Phase 2 is devoted to shadow integration. Jung astutely observed that individuals who perceive the shadows of others with exceptional clarity often do so precisely because they have yet to integrate their own. The more vehemently you deny your personal capacity for deception, selfishness, or cruelty, the more profoundly disturbed you will be when encountering these same qualities in others. Shadow integration, therefore, entails acknowledging that you, too, contain the full spectrum of human qualities you observe in others. This acceptance does not render you a bad person. It makes you a complete, fully integrated individual capable of perceiving clearly and without distorting judgment. Phase 3 is conscious participation, the cultivated ability to engage with the psychological contents of others without succumbing to overwhelm or dissolving your individual identity. Jung referred to this as developing psychological containers, the profound capacity to temporarily hold others' unconscious material while consistently maintaining the awareness that these contents are not, in fact, your own. This crucial distinction marks the boundary between genuine empathy and unhealthy enmeshment, between clear perception and psychological possession. Jung delved into the lives of historical figures to illuminate the critical divergence between successful integration and psychological breakdown. Consider the compelling case of Nietzsche, a narrative illustration of unintegrated perception. Nietzsche possessed an extraordinary, piercing insight into human nature, effortlessly penetrating social, religious, and philosophical facades with devastating clarity. Yet, he never learned to constructively integrate these profound insights. Instead of employing his perception in service of healing or understanding, he wielded it as a formidable weapon against society. He remained identified with his superior function rather than weaving it into the tapestry of a balanced personality. His ultimate isolation and tragic breakdown powerfully exemplify the consequences when superior perception remains unintegrated. Contrast this with Jung's incisive analysis of Meister Eckhart, whom he regarded as a quintessential example of successfully integrated superior perception. Eckhart possessed what Jung described as mystical intuition, an extraordinary ability to perceive spiritual and psychological realities inaccessible to others. However, unlike Nietzsche, Eckhart channeled his profound insights into compassionate service. He transformed his superior perception into a wellspring of wisdom that could nourish others without overwhelming them. He saw with crystalline clarity, but articulated his observations in ways that invited genuine understanding rather than resistance. His profound success stemmed from what Jung termed conscious humility, the vital recognition that superior perception is a sacred gift to be shared wisely, rather than a weapon to be defensively wielded. Jung understood the profound metamorphosis that occurs when gifted individuals finally cease their long-held concealment. They achieve what he termed psychological sovereignty. No one can effectively gaslight them, for they possess an absolute, unwavering trust in their own perceptions. No one can manipulate them, as they discern emotional games and nascent power dynamics long before they fully unfold. No one can diminish them, because they have transcended the need for external validation, relying instead on their immutable internal knowing. They become, in essence, untouchable, while simultaneously remaining profoundly, authentically human. This is precisely why you are encountering this message now, not because you simply manifested it, or because the universe arbitrarily decreed, "It's your time." Rather, it is because you are inherently ready. Your psyche intuitively discerns the crucial distinction between someone who still requires the protection of hiding and someone who is genuinely prepared to be seen. You have diligently undertaken the necessary internal work, whether consciously aware of it or not. You have meticulously constructed the internal scaffolding required to contain your own formidable power. You have learned to be appropriately formidable to those who would exploit you, and safely generous to those who genuinely merit your gifts. Jung placed significant emphasis on discovering what he termed the few who understand, individuals capable of engaging with differentiated consciousness devoid of defensiveness. In his seminal work, The Development of Personality, he wrote that, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." However, this profound privilege cannot be fully realized in isolation. It necessitates authentic witnessing by those capable of recognizing and honoring such authenticity. For the highly perceptive individual, he identified three essential categories of relationships. Firstly, there are fellow individuated persons, individuals who have diligently undertaken their own profound consciousness work and are thus capable of meeting you at your authentic level of being. These connections frequently ignite instantly and intensely. You recognize each other as members of what Jung termed the conscious minority. Such relationships are undoubtedly rare, but they are absolutely essential for psychological survival and flourishing. Secondly, there are those actively engaged in their own individuation process. Individuals currently pursuing therapy, deep inner work, or spiritual practices. While they may not possess superior perception themselves, they profoundly understand its inherent value. Jung observed that people who have commenced the journey of truly knowing themselves can courageously bear to be known by others. They do not experience threat from your capacity to see clearly, precisely because they are deeply committed to seeing themselves with equivalent clarity. Thirdly, There are natural containers, individuals who, despite not possessing superior perception themselves, exhibit what Jung termed a natural container function, the innate ability to hold complex psychological content without becoming overwhelmed or collapsing. These are often mature individuals who have navigated significant life challenges, thereby cultivating the profound capacity to witness the depth of others without succumbing to their own defensive reactions. Indeed, the world genuinely requires what you possess. However, not in the messianic, savior-like manner you might have been led to believe, nor in the self-sacrificing way you might have internalized. Jung was unequivocal on this point. Differentiated perception is not a burden to be carried for others. It is, fundamentally, a sacred gift to be wisely stewarded for yourself. You are meant to utilize it to construct a life that profoundly honors your intrinsic nature. You offer it selectively to individuals capable of receiving it without attempting to possess or control it. You fiercely protect it from those who would drain its essence. Some will undoubtedly label this approach as selfish. Let them. Jung understood that individuated individuals are invariably accused of selfishness by those who previously benefited from their self-abandonment. Your true purpose is not to ensure everyone's comfort with your emergence. Your profound responsibility is to honor the gift that endured its own suppression long enough to now be wielded with conscious wisdom. That gift is not intended for indiscriminate sharing. It is, first and foremost, for you. Only then, it is for those who have earned access to it through their own diligent consciousness work, and you will unequivocally recognize them. They will not feel threatened by what you perceive. Instead, they will be genuinely curious. They will not demand that you diminish yourself. They will celebrate your authentic fullness. They will not exploit your perception. They will reciprocate with their own inherent depth. These are your people. Jung referred to them as fellow travelers on the individuation path. And now that you have ceased hiding, you will inevitably find each other. Those incapable of genuinely holding your authenticity will naturally recede. Allow them to depart. Every individual who withdraws because you are too much is, in essence, creating space for someone who intuitively recognizes that you are precisely enough. Every relationship that dissolves because you refuse to shrink anymore was fundamentally constructed upon a fabricated version of yourself that never truly existed. Every connection unable to withstand your authenticity was never robust enough to warrant your precious energy. This is not loss. This is profound liberation. Your inherent gift now yearns to be used, not merely performed, not endlessly proved, but authentically used in the work you consciously choose, within the relationships you intentionally cultivate, and throughout the life you deliberately design. You do not owe the world your light. You owe yourself the invaluable experience of living fully as who you authentically are. That, ultimately, is the sole offering that truly matters. When you cease hiding to appease others, you begin to shine vibrantly to satisfy your own soul. And that particular quality of light doesn't just illuminate you. It reveals to others what becomes profoundly possible for them too. Jung dedicated his life to studying individuals who possess the extraordinary capacity to perceive everything. He concluded that they either shattered under the immense weight of their perceptions or courageously broke through to something truly extraordinary. You are reading this because at some fundamental level you chose breakthrough. Perhaps not consciously, but your psyche chose it. Your soul chose it. The resilient part of you that endured the long period of hiding chose it. And now the hiding is truly over. The arduous preparation is complete. The gift is ready. And so, unequivocally, are you. This is your undeniable permission to occupy your rightful space, to implicitly trust what you profoundly know, to authentically honor what you viscerally feel, and to strategically utilize what you clearly perceive. Not recklessly, nor carelessly,
but with conscious intent, strategic wisdom, and potent power. The gifted individual who retreated into concealment is now being summoned back, not to the world that once rejected them, but to the life that has patiently awaited your courage to claim it. Jung firmly believed that individuals who successfully integrate their superior perception fulfill a vital evolutionary function. They discern realities that collective consciousness is not yet prepared to acknowledge, thereby helping to ready humanity for crucial developmental steps towards the undiscovered self. He wrote that the individual has always been the carrier of the living spirit, the one who brings about change in society. He was convinced that people endowed with superior perception become what he termed culture carriers, agents who actively facilitate the evolution of consciousness itself. You are not too much. You never were. You are precisely what awakened consciousness embodies when it ceases apologizing for its own lucidity. The world, indeed, requires your profound insights, but it needs them delivered with the integration, wisdom, and strategic awareness that can transform what might be perceived as dangerous perception into potent cultural medicine. Your intrinsic gift is not your burden. Your unconscious relationship to that gift was your burden. Now, as you meticulously learn to integrate it consciously, everything irrevocably changes.
If these words have resonated with an unspoken truth you've long felt but struggled to articulate, know this: you are profoundly not alone. There exists a vibrant community of individuals who deeply understand the complex experience of concealing one's gifts and the arduous journey required to reclaim them. If you are ready to cease hiding, acknowledge this by liking. If you are committed to the path of conscious emergence, consider subscribing. Share this message with anyone who needs explicit permission to be truly seen. You were never destined to remain small. You were meant to master the art of expanding your being without causing harm to yourself or to others. And now, you possess that profound knowledge.